Hello, Josh Shapiro.
Oh,
How are you?
Good, good. We have a good crowd. We're ready. We're going to get started. And
okay.
I get to introduce you. You better be ready.
All right.
All right.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Great turnout. Thank you very much for being here. My name's Laszlo Boyd, and I've been involved, as many of you have, in ChangePA for this is now the third election cycle. We're chipping away at the challenge of making government in Harrisburg responsible. I was going to say responsible again, but it's been a long time since it has been. I have some of my best friends from Harrisburg there on this call who are going to tell you just why we need to elect more people. So let me run through the sort of order of the program real quickly so you know what to look forward to. In a few minutes, a couple of minutes, we're going to hear from Attorney General Shapiro, who we're planning on being the next governor of the state. And after we hear from him, we're fortunate enough to have three of our terrific legislators to Leanne Krueger is going to talk a bit about the new maps and sort of what we can expect from there, from sort of as we move forward. And then Jen O'Mara and Joe Webster, who have toiled in the vineyards of Harrisburg. Are there vineyards there, Jen? I don't think so. Will tell us what it's like being in the minority and why they'd really like to have a few friends join them. So and then after that, Mark Bernstein is going to talk to us about the process we're going to use moving forward in terms of trying to identify some candidates to join Leanne, Jen and Joe. We're making progress on that, but it's a long battle. And then we'll hear some closing remarks from my wife, Flora Wolf, and from Ann Hagley, and then you can go have dinner. So let me see let's go to Kim now. Okay, Kim, you're on.
Okay, great. Before I introduce the Attorney General, I want to just tell you how we're going to do this. He has been kind enough to agree to talk to us about why he needs a House that's going to support him. And then he's also willing to take a couple questions, but as you can see, he's in the car, so he's doesn't have a whole lot of time. He's running from place to place. And to facilitate that, I would ask you, if you have a question you would like to ask him, to please put it in the chat. And then I will pick a couple of the questions that show up in the chat that I think are most interesting to all of us, and I will ask them. So you can either chat to everyone, or you can chat to me specifically, whatever feels more comfortable to you. And we will do that as soon as the Attorney General finishes telling us about his race and about the Pennsylvania State House. So I'm going to now turn over to introducing him, which I'm very excited to do. It's a pleasure for me to introduce the Attorney General and the next governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro.
All right. Hey, Kim, thank you.
No, wait a minute.
Okay, I'll wait.
All right. I've known, excuse the informality, Josh since the summer of 2000, when I was a full-time volunteer for Joe Huffel's reelection campaign, and Josh at that time was Joe Huffel's chief of staff. So it's been 22 years that I've had the privilege of watching the trajectory of a man who from the beginning of his career has been devoted to public service and to making a more just society for everyone in Pennsylvania. For the purpose of today's meeting, I want to emphasize that that part of his career, Josh actually served in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives from 2008 through 2011. And in fact, I think for one of those terms, it was the last time there was ever a Democratic majority in the Pennsylvania House. I think it was a grand total of one surplus Democrat. So he knows the importance of the PA House. He was also part of the Democratic team in 2011 to bring the first Democratic majority ever to the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners. And he led that organization, that great group, for many years. They have managed to maintain their Democratic majority since his first election. And of course, he has run and won 2 statewide elections. In fact, getting a few more votes than our President Joe Biden received in the 2020 election. All of this positions him to be our next governor. One we all, I especially, can be proud to help elect. And as ChangePA, we want to provide him a strong Democratic presence in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives.
Yes.
So now, Josh, you can talk.
Hey, Kim, thank you so much. And thank you for your friendship, you and Toby, over many, many, many years. Thank you for believing in me when I was starting out my career, and very few people did, and you were there. And thank you for the important work you're doing for Democrats across Pennsylvania, particularly elevating women candidates across Pennsylvania, and especially trying to help me have a Democratic House to govern with. I will tell you, it's a pleasure to be here with all of the supporters, as well as with Jen and Joe, who are going to speak to you later. And let me give you a preview of what Jen O'Mara and Joe Webster are going to say. They're going to tell you that being in the minority stinks, and they want to be in the majority, and they want to be in charge, and therefore be in a position to advance policies that are going to help a lot of folks. And let me tell you what Leanne is going to share with you. She's going to share with you a hell of a plan that is organized and is in the process of being funded, and a clear path to help us get in the majority. So gang, I'm sorry for kind of stealing some of your talking points, but I think I know where you're going, and I'm so grateful for the leadership that you've shared. I think it is critically important that we have a Democratic majority that I can work with in Pennsylvania. One that is going to help us ensure that every single child in Pennsylvania gets their constitutionally mandated, thorough and efficient education. We need a Democratic majority to ensure that we have safe communities all across this Commonwealth. A Democratic majority to work with me to make sure that we have economic opportunities in all communities, including where I just came from, in Columbia County, where I was just on a farm not too long ago. Communities that have been oftentimes left out, they need to be included, and a Democratic majority will help me do that. Here's what else is going to happen when we have a Democratic majority. They're going to help make sure that the average Pennsylvanian doesn't get screwed. And let me explain what I mean by that. Too often times, we have, some big corporation that puts profits before people, and that is bolstered by the laws that are in place in Pennsylvania that allow them to do that. And average folks get hurt. And what we're also seeing here right now is that the 10 Republicans who are running against me want to use Pennsylvania government to screw over those who depend on it, whether it's depending on it for their reproductive rights, depending on it for their workers' rights and the ability to organize, or depending on government to go out and ensure that they have access to the ballot box. Now, I want to have a Democratic majority, so I don't have to use my veto pen to protect you from what those Republicans I know want to do to you and to your rights. Instead, I want to use that pen to sign bills that are progressive, that are going to advance the cause here in the Commonwealth. And so as I go forward in this campaign, together with my running mate, Austin Davis, a state representative himself, we're going to be working to make sure that up and down the ticket, or as Leanne would say, down and up the ticket, we have victories that are going to lead to better policy. And I'm really proud of the fact that, our campaign has already put in place a well-funded, coordinated campaign that is focused not just on electing Josh Shapiro and Austin Davis to governor and lieutenant governor. But it's also working to make sure that we turn that U.S. Senate seat blue, that we protect our vulnerable U.S. House members, and most especially that we bring about Democratic majorities in the legislature. We have never had a coordinated campaign on the ground this early, and one that is as well funded as it is today. And so my team has worked real hard on that. And I take, a real sense of both responsibility and pride to be our nominee for the Democratic Party, and a belief that I have a responsibility to help elevate others on the ballot, especially those running where I used to serve in the state house. So I want to thank you for the work you're doing, the investments you're making. I want to apologize for being in the car, but it's been a good part of my life running around our great Commonwealth. And with that, Kim, I'll turn it back to you and would be more than happy to try and answer a few questions before you hear from Leanne and her colleagues.
Great, thanks. So I'll start with this one. It seems that the candidates who have been getting a lot of press and maybe a lot of victories over the past few election cycles have been sort of the crazies, the Donald Trumpian types who are willing to be extreme in their statements. Can you speak to how someone like you, who is a calm and reasonable human being, can help lead a ticket if your Republican opponent is not tied to the truth and not tied to normal dialogue? How do we start bringing this conversation back to normalcy?
Yeah. Well, first off, I mean, I've got a history of winning those tough races against the extremists. I mean, I won in 2016 when, unfortunately, Secretary Clinton and our Senate candidate, Katie McGinty, lost. And as you noted, I won in 2020 and got more votes than not only anybody running that year, but anyone in the history of Pennsylvania. And I think it has been because we put forth a message of calm and competence, of reasonableness. And as someone who knows how to get things done for folks all across Pennsylvania, from Columbia County to my home county of Montgomery County. And I think, for my part, what I'm going to do is challenge their lies directly and put forth ideas that are going to help make Pennsylvania's lives better. And an example of that is what I'll be announcing tomorrow, a series of measures to cut costs for families, to put money back in their pockets, to deal with some of the nuisance taxes that we have in Pennsylvania that don't really advance a whole lot of important progressive policies, but rather really harm families. That's the kind of tangible stuff that I think Pennsylvanians want to hear. And while I recognize that there's a lot of sort of red jerseys out there that might never give a Democrat a look, there are more than enough voters out there who want calm, competence, reasonableness, and they want to hear what you're going to do to make their lives better. And I know that Leanne and Jen, Joe understand that. And I know they'll be counseling the candidates for the state house who are in these tough districts that we must win to focus on those issues about how to improve people's lives in those particular districts and get away from the noise and the vitriol that not just Kim defined Donald Trump, but quite literally defines every one of the 10 people running against me. And they asked me the other day, which one do you want to run against or which one don't you want to run against? I said, it literally doesn't matter. They're all the same. They're all about the big lie. They'd all sign a Texas abortion ban into law. They'd all roll back our civil rights. They'd all get rid of vote by mail. They'd all make it harder for workers to organize in the Commonwealth. I mean, these are not people that want to invest in education and public safety and economic development. They want to play games with culture wars to try and win an election. I won't let them get away with that. I've never let anybody get away with that in the past, and I won't let these guys get away with it. And we will have a full agenda of items that I think speak to the needs of Pennsylvanians that not only I can run on, but our state rep and state Senate candidates can run on as well.
Here's another question. What do you what do you think can be done? This is a very straight election question. What can be done about people not voting the whole ticket? We lost in the compromise on fixing some of our voter laws, the right for people to click the whole, to click a party's ticket. So what can you do? What do you think structure can do to help make sure that that when you win big, you bring everybody with you?
We're going to that'll be the central focus of the coordinated campaign after the next couple of months, where they're spending all of their time focused on voter registration. Once we get into the general election time, there'll be an incredible emphasis placed on vote by mail and making sure that you apply for your ballot. And once you get your ballot, we'll be chasing you down to return it. And in returning it, stressing the importance of voting every single race on the ballot. Obviously, Leanne will invest money through the HDCC to, for the individual candidates to communicate their particular message. But we'll be focused through the coordinated on making sure that not only do voters vote, but they vote up and down the ticket.
Great. We don't know yet what's going to happen with the education funding litigation.
Right.
So I don't even know. I don't know if there's anything you can say about that right now, but.
Yeah, I'll just say real quick. I mean, obviously it's going to be a few months before the judge rules, and I would assume whichever side loses will appeal. So this is going to take some time. But what is, I guess, not known publicly yet is the Attorney General. I'll be filing a brief with the court arguing that our current funding construct is unconstitutional, and arguing that we need to invest more in how we educate our children. So that is coming, and that'll be the official position of the Office of Attorney General with the court.
Great. Okay.
I don't want to take too much time away from the House members.
No,
so
let me just see. You've sort of already addressed this. Many voters, many people who are registered don't vote. So I guess what you are saying is that this coordinated campaign is going to be working to help make sure that once we have finished registering all these people, that that we will actually have a system in place to have them go to that next step.
Yeah, exactly. And look, that'll be in concert with the HDCC and the HS or the SDCC, pardon me. And we'll be working to make sure that there's coordination there on getting those voters out who have been identified. But yes, there will be a lot of attention focused on the knocking, the dragging, the texting, the calling, getting people out to vote, getting back to the basics that we sort of got away from in 2021 and in 2020 as well.
Right. All right, here's my last question for you.
Sure.
Then I appreciate you wanting us to hear from our other electeds. Independents. How do we bring them over to our side, especially given the rhetoric among Republicans about how extreme Democrats are? And
I think it starts with a message that lets them know how government is going to help them. That's why you're going to hear me spend a lot of time in this campaign talking about how we're going to cut costs for families, how we're going to make sure their kids get a good quality education, how we're going to make sure that they have safe communities to live in and economic opportunities. I think it's those basic things that we need to be talking about every single day as Democrats that has appealed to independent-minded voters who I think will be open to the Democratic candidates for state house and certainly to our candidacy as well.
Okay, I do have one more. What do you think how big do you think your victory is going to be?
Look, Kim, I appreciate your optimism, but here's what I'll tell you. And I think it's important for folks to keep this in mind. The presidential race in 2016 was settled by 40,000 votes. And in 2020, it was settled by 80,000 votes. We're a Commonwealth of 13 million people with 9 million voters. And it came down to less than 100,000 votes both times. I would not be shocked if this governor's race, particularly given some of the national mood, comes down to less than 100,000 votes. I think we're going to be on the plus side of that, certainly. And I feel really confident about that. But I'm also pretty cognizant that it's going to be really close. And, as Leanne walks you through her competitive races, there'll be whatever will be 6, 8, 10 of those races that probably will come down to 1,000 votes. So I think you're looking at a governor's race that will come down to less than 100,000, and these competitive ledge races that'll come down to 1,000 or less. And that's why your work really matters. That's why your fundraising matters, your organizing matters. And that's why we need you. Why I'm just so grateful to all of you for supporting me and supporting our House candidates.
All right, bottom line, no complacency. We are.
Hell no. Kim, come on, you've known me forever. I always run like I did my first race. True story. My first race for state rep, overwhelming Republican district. I had knocked on 10,000 doors by Labor Day, like myself, not with volunteers, but myself. And really felt like I had a ton of momentum. And we took our first poll just after Labor Day. And Kim, I was losing 65-21.
Yeah.
And I didn't give up. I went out and knocked on 8,000 more doors post Labor Day. And we won that race by 5 or 6 points. I always run like I'm down 65-21 in every race. So zero complaint on my part.
Okay, Josh, this is obviously a good time for us.
Our ledge candidates to do the same, and I want to thank you for all you guys are doing.
Thank you. We will not be complacent.
Thank you so much.
Make sure that we find every vote and that we bring every state rep we can along to make sure that Pennsylvania can be what we all want it to be. Thank you for joining us.
We need it.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Kim. See you, gang.
Okay.
All right. Well, we build this as the start of our 2022 campaign. I think that the Attorney General / gubernatorial candidate did a great job of making the case for why this is so important. And we hope you view it as a call to arms, and maybe the wrong term, but a call to get engaged. I want to turn now to, we've got 3 great legislators, and I want to start with Leanne Krueger, who is the representative from the 161st district in Delaware County, and is also the chair of the House Democratic Campaign Committee. And we've asked Leanne to talk a bit about the new maps, which I know all of you are reading about. And I think she can not only tell you what's happened, but maybe tell you the significance of what happened. So Leanne, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks so much, Laszlo. And it's great to see so many familiar faces and also new friends here today. I just want to say first that I'm so grateful for the work that ChangePA has done over the years, because folks like Joe Webster and Jen O'Mara and the other candidates you've sent to Harrisburg wouldn't be there without your support. And they have made serving in Harrisburg a hell of a lot more pleasant because I now have allies that share my values. And I didn't feel that way when I first flipped the seat 7 years ago. I do want to underscore what Josh said, though. I get really nervous when I hear people talking about Josh Shapiro winning by a landslide, because I'm not expecting that. And Joe Biden didn't win Pennsylvania by a landslide, right? And we all remember 2016, either going to bed really late or waking up the next morning and realizing that Hillary Clinton hadn't won Pennsylvania at all. And so Josh is a terrific candidate. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure he makes it to the governor's mansion, but it's not a guarantee, folks. And I don't see a scenario in which he wins Pennsylvania by 10 or 20 points in a year like 2022. So let's stay focused on the reality that we face, which is that, yes, we have the fairest maps we've seen in 30 years. If you weren't paying attention to Twitter today, about 90 minutes ago, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court finally approved the House and Senate new maps without any changes. They've given us a condensed timeline. So House and Senate candidates start circulating petitions on Friday, on the 18th. And we need to have them done within 10 days on the 28th. And so if there's a candidate that you're already volunteering for or care about, all of us are going to need help to get on the ballot this year because we need the same amount of signatures in a compressed timeline, and it's going to be crazy for everybody. So if you're already supporting somebody, pay attention to their emails or outreach about petition signing because they're going to need your help. But these maps, thanks to the leadership of Joanna McClinton, who fought like hell to get us the best maps we've seen in a long time, are finally fair. Now, most national pundits will tell you that they still do lean slightly Republican in the House and more than slightly Republican in the Senate, but we believe they really do give us a path to the majority in Pennsylvania, at least in the state House. Now, I will tell you, though, we are bracing for a red wave this year. Biden's numbers, people's exhaustion with COVID, inflation, all of these things point to a year that could be tough for Democrats. And we know that traditionally happens when a Democrat has the White House and we're in the midterms, especially the first midterms. And so I do believe that the political environment will be more challenging for us than what we faced in 2018 when it was a Trump midterm and we had historic wins and with your help helped flip 14 seats in the state house. Saying that, though, these new maps do give us tremendous opportunity. And again, the Supreme Court ruled today that they're constitutional. There are no more barriers that we expect. We're off to the races with these maps. So let me tell you what it looks like. First of all, there are 6 new open seats that have been created that lean strongly blue. These are seats where we expect that our candidates can run hard and win. And in many of these seats, there's primaries. So you may decide to wait to see who comes out of the primary before you jump in to support somebody. But the seats are in Lehigh Valley in the 22nd, in Lancaster in the 49th, in Monco in the 54th, in Dauphin County in the 104th, and then 2 in Philly, the 190th and the 203rd. So because of population gains in the blue parts of the Commonwealth, largely in the Southeast and up in the Northeast, seats have actually moved from red rural areas to blue suburban and even urban districts. So that's good news for us as Democrats. Those are 6 seats that we start with that we think we can run hard in. After that, we have 5 incumbents in difficult races who are on the front lines. Now, none of these are folks that ChangePA Blue has helped in the past, but I just want to flag them for you in case you happen to hear about these candidates. The first one is Kevin Boyle in Philadelphia in the 172nd. That district has been a historically Trumpy district, even though it's in Philly and incorporates the Northeast, and it might be a challenge. The second one is the 3rd district in Erie, where Ryan Bizzarro is running for re-election. The 3rd is the 16th district in Beaver County, where Rob Matzey is running for re-election. The 4th is the 9th district in Lawrence County, where Chris Donato is running for re-election. And the 5th is the 72nd in Cambria County, where Frank Burns is running for re-election. Now, the good news is that these are all incumbents who have done a lot of work in their district, but we think they are the most vulnerable this year. After that, we've got 7 districts that are our monitor districts, where we've got Democratic candidates. We think they can pull it through, but if this is a red wave year, we really need to pay attention. And so those incumbents are Dan Williams in Chester County, Brandon Markozik in Allegheny, Bob Mursky in Erie, Anita Kulik in Allegheny, Kyle Mullins up in Lackawanna, Eddie Day Pashinsky, who's in Lehigh, and Nick Piscatano, who's in Allegheny. So if you hear those names, these are folks who legitimately could have a real race this year. Now on to the competitive open seats. These are not quite as blue as those 6 new seats that I mentioned, but these are seats where we do think we've got a decent chance at competing. 2 of them are in Allegheny County, and we've got some really exciting candidates running there on the 30th and the 33rd. We've got one in Center County, which is an open seat. And then we do have a bunch of retirements this year on both sides of the aisle. We have 2 Democrats who are retiring up in northeastern Pennsylvania. One is Mike Carroll and the other one is Jerry Mullery. And so these are competitive seats that we're going to be working hard to either flip or hold. And then after that, and these are the seats that ChangePA has historically played the most in, we have 11 red to blue races this year. A bunch of these Republicans have announced their retirement. In fact, anybody who worked on Brittany Rodis's race last year, Andrew Lewis, announced his retirement today. That seat got a lot bluer. Todd Stevens in Monco, who I know some of you have been working to take out for a long time, his seats got bluer. Here in Delco, Chris Quinn's district, the 168th, got bluer. We've got another one up in the Reading area where Jim Cox is, the 129th. We've got 4 in Bucks County that we think are competitive. The Megan Schroeder seat got a lot bluer, and then the Tomlinson, Pollinchuk, and Ferry seat are more competitive. Schroeder and Ferry have already announced their retirement, so we'll be running candidates in open seats. And then again, back in Delco, Craig Williams is on this list. And then in Chester County, Tim Hennessy is on this list. So I know if you've been paying attention for a while, some of these are Republicans who we've been running candidates against for a couple cycles now. But the difference this year is thanks to Joanna's leadership and the Legislative Apportionment Commission, we actually have fairer maps to run Democrats in. So that's the landscape. And I know that's a lot of numbers. Laszlo, I've told you that I'm happy to come back at any point, maybe post-primary when we've got our top targets. I want to keep you all engaged because your success is our success. And frankly, we couldn't do this without you. The last thing which Laszlo asked me to say is that in order to make some of these seats more competitive, some of our seats got tougher. And so there's a bunch of us who are running in seats that actually got redder through these new maps because of the territories that we needed to lose to either make other Democratic safer or Republican seats more competitive. And my seat is one of those seats. So mine is now the lowest performing Democratic seat in Delaware County. I got here by knocking on thousands of doors, just like Josh did, and won by about 700 votes, won my first reelection by 597 votes. I'm not scared of hard work. And so Friday, I'm going to be out on doors just like everybody else as soon as petitions start. So Laszlo, I'm going to stop there and see if there's any, I don't know if you're going to take questions now or if you want to hold that to the end.
I think we'll hold that to the end. Leanne, thank you so much. I just want to say for everybody here, Leanne's been gracious enough to come to a number of our meetings, share information with us. She's always been a great supporter and a great resource. And I asked her to mention her race because we want to make sure Leanne stays in the legislature, whatever it takes. So Leanne, thank you so much.
Thanks, Laszlo. I appreciate that. And again, I appreciate everything you're all doing. Nancy Kleinberg, I'll drop the Bucks County seats into the chat.
Okay, great. So you all get 3 continuing education credits for this Zoom because you're learning a lot, and we're going to make this available on a recording, and we're also going to do some highlights so that you don't have to have taken diligent notes on everything. I want to turn to our 2 legislators, and I'm going to start with Jen O'Mara, who's from the 165th district in Delaware, a district that I think she will tell you has gotten a bit bluer with this redistricting. And I've asked both Jen and Joe to talk a little bit about why they really need to get to a majority, why it's in the minority, and I've learned this vividly from their descriptions. The majority controls everything. They control the committees, they control which bills get considered, they control the votes. And it's not that it's not a lot of fun, it's really frustrating. So I'm going to ask Jen, who probably was the first person I ever talked with when we got started with this, to talk a little bit. A lot of you have met and heard from her before. She's terrific, and so is Joe. Don't worry, Joe, you get your chance. So Jen, tell us a little bit about life in Harrisburg.
Thank you, Laszlo, and good evening, everyone. If I seem busy, it's because I'm printing petition turf packets as we get ready for petitions to start. So first, before I get started, I just want to thank everyone at ChangePA. You have been a consistent supporter of mine. And like Josh mentioned, you know, some of these races are won by small margins. My first race was 530 votes and my second race was 1,300. So while our margin grew, which was great, it was still a nail biter and we had to wait for days as votes got counted. And I will briefly mention my new district did get better. Joe Biden won my new district by 9 points. My DPI is 57, which DPI stands for Democratic Performance Index, but 43% of it is new. And so I have a lot of ground to cover in meeting new voters and making sure that they're hearing from us. And as I've shared with Laszlo and Flora, I'm expecting a baby in July. And so my election campaigning, it is going to be very different for me and my team this year. So to tell you what it's like to be in the minority, I am going to share two stories. It sucks being in the minority. There's no other way to say it. We have such a little say in what we are trying to do. We're always playing defense. Joe can talk a little bit about some of his experiences as well, but it's very similar. You know, our bills don't run, our amendments are never agreed to, and it is disappointing. The first time I really felt the anger of being in the minority was this session. I had a bill that I was working on from last session, a veterans bill. It was agreed to, I got it to run out of the House. It was great. And then it went and died in the Senate. And that happens pretty often to Democratic bills, especially when it gets near election time. So this session, I started over again. I reintroduced it. And unfortunately, a Republican senator decided that it was his bill and he stole it from me, took the same exact language, introduced it, got it passed and signed into law. And he got to use all of my work and my research and all the stuff we did in the House to take credit for a great bill for veterans. Now, don't get me wrong, I did get up on the floor and I took credit and said this, you know, is the Senate version of my bill. And I very graciously thanked the senator. But the reality is that this happens all the time. Republicans see good ideas from Democrats, and rather than working with us in a cooperative way, they literally just steal it, introduce it, put their name on it, and it becomes their accomplishment. Another instance, I was working with a Republican member from Montgomery County. She is a newer member, and we were working on a bill to authorize a clinical study for for psilocybins, if anyone knows what they are, they're mushrooms, but how they could be potentially used as a mental health treatment for veterans who have PTSD and traumatic brain injury. And it's just a clinical study. We're not trying to authorize anything, but she came to me and asked if I wanted to be the co-prime with her. And I said a couple times, are you sure you want to put my name on this? Are you, have you thought it through? Are you sure? And I asked her so many times, she finally said, what's the deal? Do you not want to work with me? And I said, no, I absolutely do. But the minute you put a Democrat's name on a bill, you almost guarantee it's going to go live in a graveyard. And she insisted that we work on it together. And a couple weeks later, she was, man, you're right. I've had some people yell at me because I'm working with you. It makes me want to do it more, but she's like, I can't believe that's the reality of the situation. And so when we talk about getting more Democrats elected, it isn't just because, we all love Democrats, which we do, but it's that if we ever want to really accomplish meaningful change for Pennsylvania, if we want to tackle climate change, if we want to stop the attacks on women's health and choice, If we want to fairly fund our schools without having to go through a court case, the list can go on and on. It's not going to happen until Democrats are in charge. And I think, and I'll wrap up because I know Joe has to talk and we may take questions, but I think the leadership that Joanna McClinton just exemplified in working on our new maps shows the real difference that Democrats have when they're in leadership positions versus Republicans. You know, we knew we had a Democratic Supreme Court. We knew that we had a fair person serving as the LRC chair. And rather than trying to implement Democratic gerrymandering, Joanna truly worked hard to make our districts fair, to make them a better representation of the demographics in Pennsylvania, and to make sure that we were following the Constitution. That was not the case in 2012. If any of you followed state politics, they literally went into dark rooms. They drew the maps to benefit themselves. And it was gerrymandering, and exactly what gerrymandering means. That's what they did, drew maps to benefit politicians. Whereas I really believe Joanna drew maps to benefit voters and to benefit our constituents. So I don't think Democrats we want them there. We do a better job leading. We try to work for everyone, even if it sometimes bites us in the butt for doing that. I think Michelle Obama's saying of when they go low, we go high is really something our leaders try and do in real time. So thank you for having me. Thank you for all you continue to do. As Leanne put it, you know, this is going to be a tough year, but with folks like you actually paying attention and not being complacent, realizing that Trump might not be on the ballot anymore, but his values and the things he pushed for still very much are, I do have hope that we can do everything we possibly can do to make Pennsylvania a blue state. So thank you, Laszlo. Thank you everyone at ChangePA for all that you're doing for this Pennsylvania State House and State Senate.
Jen, always a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much. I'm going to be interested. I see that you're adding a new member to your team. That's exciting. Look, one of the things that we tell you when we ask you to donate is that we're going to do a very rigorous job of evaluating the candidates. And one of the things that I hope you realize is that we really have good working relationships with them. When Jen won that first race in 2018, it was really close. She said about 500 votes. I was following the results that day. And Jen, bless her heart, called me at 12:30 that night to tell me she had won, which was the highlight of the evening. So great stuff. Let me turn to Joe Webster, who I've gotten to know really well. One of the things about all three of these people, we get an extra bonus. You get to hear them. I consider them friends now. So it's been great fun. Joe Webster is from the 150th district in Montgomery County. He retired after a distinguished service career in the Air Force. He's works as hard as anybody I know. He's been a real help to ChangePA and a real supporter. And Joe, I figure that you can improvise off what Jen said, and you probably have some different stories. So Joe, take it away.
I'm going to take Joe off of mute.
Gosh, I was all poised and then I hit the button twice. Excuse me. Good evening. And Laszlo, thanks for your kind words, and everyone for taking time, you know, on a Wednesday evening. I first want to tell you, I'm a little bit compelled to recognize my colleagues that are here, because it's important. Leadership is important. You heard both of them speak from that perspective, and the extra things that both do. As you know, Leanne's talking from her leadership role for the whole committee of, you know, the Montgomery County, the Pennsylvania Democrats, you know, across the board, and her leadership with the House campaign committees. You might not know that well beyond her years, and I look younger than I am. Jen is that young. She's the chairwoman of our Southeastern Pennsylvania delegation. So a lot of time and energy goes into sort of wrestling with the rest of us to support issues and be in the right place at the right time. And I'm a rank and file guy, but I've been punished in a way, and I joke about that. Either, and Leanne shares the Appropriations Committee with me, and I also sit on the State Government Committee. So I'll try to say a couple of things without, just reiterating what's already been said. But last summer, I can tell you on the State Government Committee that I attended 32 hearings about campaign fraud and voting rights. And in those 32 hearings, however, that was 3-4 hour each, there were 52 expert witnesses. 51 of those expert witnesses said that the election results were fair and that they were audited properly and endorsed the results. One from the Heritage Foundation had a different view and said things like, the aspersions, things that you hear over and over and over. And then the Republican chair of that committee, who went through 32 hearings, hearing expert testimony tell him one thing, he wrote, a 100-page bill attempting to undo vote by mail, attempting to undo the drop boxes, and attempting things like we could have poll watchers from another county. So imagine, the Republicans would gather up some individuals and come to your voting place and intimidate voters, and so after 32 hearings, they came out of that on the same direction that they were before it all started. It didn't matter what they heard. Some of the expert testimony, I can remember the Republican election services person from Ohio trying to tell them, you're claiming that there are 69,000 voters who weren't registered to vote or not. Do you realize there's no evidence of that, right? It's been said out loud a lot of times. No one will swear to that in court, because once you get to the point of actually being in court and raising your right hand, now you have to be responsible for what you're saying. So all of these, I may be on a little bit of a tangent, but all of these issues over and over again, to no effect. And as Jen said, there's a long list of things that need to be changed. And you've heard me do my shtick, right? It's healthcare and equality and pay equity and gender equity and LGBTQ rights and funding public education and minimum wage and tax reform and gun safety and climate and public transportation. You go through this whole list, none of that moves. None of it gets a hearing, none of it gets debated, voted on, amended until we change the leadership and the majority party in Harrisburg. Without stepping all over what's already been said, I want to talk just briefly about messaging, and this is another reason why it's so important to change the majority party, because the messaging has impact, ideas have impact, and we're not getting past things like small government cut taxes, because they didn't cut taxes, they shifted taxes, right? They went from corporate taxes and high income individuals to the middle class. They didn't cut taxes, they shifted them. Small government, that's interesting. We just went through that long list of really big, complicated problems. You don't solve really big, complicated problems with an itty bitty tiny bit of resources, right? You have to have commensurate expertise and commensurate resources to attack a big problem. And the one that's really kind of been under, like a spur under my saddle for the last few weeks has been our, Leanne and I have been through all the budget hearings. So I got to spend last summer in state government hearings. The last 3 weeks have been budget hearings in Harrisburg, where behind all the theater and the political questions to sort of dismantle the governor's proposals is an idea that I finally could tease out. And the idea that they're trying to make sound normal is that the powers of the governor are given to him by the legislature. That's not the United States of America. The powers of the governor are in the Constitution. There's 3 equal branches of government. And what the Republican strategy, I think, is, it's more clear to me, it's rather shrewd, but it's largely disingenuous, is if you can't win the statewide election and the governor's office, then we're going to change the terms of government. We're going to attempt to run, day-to-day operations of the executive branch from the legislature. And we have a number of indications, where they've been trying to do that, emergency powers and other things of the governor. It's more clear to me that they're playing a game with this idea that the Supreme Court, could also be gerrymandered into districts, that the state legislature, where they can potentially win a majority of individual small races, would have the authority to sort of distinguish the powers that the other branches of government have. So that may be more than you asked for from me today, but I think that's one more reason you're seeing a Republican, they're a small minority of individuals who have a majority position in government because of old maps and gerrymandering and some misinformation, but they're on a track to sort of undermine some of the basic parts of what we would consider, foundational democratic values in the United States. And that's just one more really big reason to me that we need to change. We need to change PA for the Democratic majority. So Laszlo, that's Professor Webster for today. And you're just like me, Laszlo. You didn't push the mute button.
Okay. Joe's my technician. Joe mentioned wanting to change the rules, and all of us should pay a lot of attention to that, because they're also trying to change the rules through constitutional amendments thrown up in elections that don't get a lot of voters, and change the way the Supreme Court is picked, and a number of other issues. So we really have to be very attentive to that. Joe bringing those things to our attention today is, I think, really important. Yeah. Joe, thanks a lot.
They passed, to make that point home, Laszlo, they passed in the last election, off year, non-presidential election in November of 2021, they passed a constitutional amendment, and it passed with 12% of registered voters supporting that constitutional amendment. 12%. That's not the will of the people. That's not a majority. It's not even close. But that's what the game is.
Joe, I think your assessment of the Republican objective really is to have minority rule. Thank you very much, Joe. That was terrific. We've gotten a lot of mileage out of 3 great legislators who have been real supporters and real great sources of information. I think with that, what I want to do is turn to Mark Bernstein, who is chairing our selection committee. And by selection, we mean the committee that's going to go through the process of winnowing down those larger lists that Leanne and others have talked about, and trying to figure out who we end up giving money to and who we end up supporting in the fall. We stay away from primaries. So Mark, are you ready to go?
Absolutely. Ready to have me? Tom, can you pull up the first slide? I'm
Absolutely, Judge.
here, the selection committee, which will make recommendations. We're trying to trim down 203 districts to a manageable level. And the number of districts that we can support financially completely depends on how we do in raising money. Our goal is to win the House majority. To do that, if my math is correct, we need 11 pickups. Move on. You're on the donate page.
I'm sorry, Judge, I will see what I can do here.
Okay. But our minimum goal, if we can't actually pick up 11 states, is to at least maintain a veto sustaining minority so that Governor Shapiro can avoid the worst of what the Republican legislators may foist on us. As before, we're not looking for, we need 12 seats, Leanne corrects me. We're not sure, we don't want sure winners, that's not who we want to support. And we don't want to support long shots. We want to flip seats. We want to make a difference where our funds can make a difference and flip a seat from Republican to Democrat. A close election is what we're looking for, and we want to protect our vulnerable incumbents. And as before, we're going to support our 6 alumni legislators who were elected with our support before. The Supreme Court just made our job easier because they approved that map, so we do know now where the districts are. The petitioning starts today, I think, on the 18th. Is today the 18th? And ends on the 28th. So there's only 10 days for petitioning. ChangePA does not support candidates in the primaries, but there may be many candidates that we think have a shot at taking a Republican seat who are not in a primary race. And we would like to support them with early money. That was one of the results we got from our study of what happened last time. Tom, can you move the slide? There are 203 House districts, and many incumbents have become secure, but here are the new districts, which now are the official districts. And they're listed by DPI, which is Democratic Performance Index, which takes prior statewide votes, translates that into the districts we're talking about, and shows what are Democratic leaning or Republican leaning districts. Tom, move it on. Anything 45 and over is a potential district for us. So if you look at this chart quickly, there were 45 to 46, 13 before, and 7 in the new districts. But more importantly, if you look at the 50 and over, you can see that there are 18, 24, 28 districts. 50 means that it's split. 51 means it's a slight Democratic advantage in the prior elections that have been looked at in that specific district. It's done by taking the division by division and adding them up. So 51 and over, we've got 28 that are possibilities. The whole list of what we're looking at is 33. This was put together before we knew that this map would be the map. But we do know now that this is the map and it's going to be, and this work has been productive, and this is what we're going to start with. Next slide. Here's the geographic distribution. The better it is, the less democratic DPI is, and the bluer it is, the more democratic the DPI is. This is just showing you the demographic, the statewide distribution of these districts. Next slide, Tom. We also, no, you skipped one. Go back. Oh, okay. Well, we also have a slide that shows House districts with no incumbents. There you go. Thank you. And of course, if there's no incumbent, we have a stronger possibility of a strong Democratic candidate doing well, as opposed to running against a strong long-term incumbent. I'm corrected that the 18th is Friday, and that's great. We've got 2 days. Go to the next one. These are the total of the districts that are in our first look. We've got to go further than this, but these are the total of the districts that are in our first look for narrowing it down. The number of districts we can recommend for support depends on how much money we raise to give to these candidates. But here's the map of where we're going to look and where we're going to narrow it down. Tom, next slide. Maybe it's the last one. It's not the last one. But this is just the beginning. From here, and we didn't even know when we put this together whether this would be accurate because we didn't have the districts, but it turns out the Supreme Court has decided these are the districts. Within each district, we're going to find out more info. We're going to take into account the registration, the turnout, the census data and demographics of the districts. And we're going to look at the districts that don't have a primary first, because the conclusion that we made when we reviewed what happened last 2 years ago was that early money was important. And we're going to try to give money earlier than we have in the past. So if there are districts where we think the Democrat has a good chance and there's no primary, we may give them early money. But additionally to what we have to consider is who the candidates are, who our candidates are, how they fit the district, who the Republican candidates are, how long they have been incumbents and what they've done as incumbents, or alternatively, how much consideration should be given to a district which has no incumbent. And finally, we're going to have to consider, insofar as we can, their campaign plan, their staffing, their financing beyond ChangePA, and how we can make a difference. We're looking to put money into campaigns where our money makes a difference and turns the district democratic. Last slide, Tom. There's one more. You had it earlier, I think. That's it. That's it. Here's just an early place where we looked at Democrats and Republicans. Both were incumbents, and House districts without incumbents. These, of course, will be districts that we will look at, because the districts without an incumbent, if everything else is the same, we're not up against incumbency. where there are two incumbents, we got to take a good hard look at the district, because at least we know we have a strong Democratic candidate who knows how to win, at least in some districts. So that's where we've been. We're we're way ahead of the game now because we know the districts, and this is what we're going to be looking at. The number of districts that we can support depends on the number of funds that we can raise. Anne or Flora, I think it's up to you now.
I'm going to unmute. I see Anne has unmuted herself. So Anne and Flora, if you two would like to go ahead, I think we're all ready, please.
Okay, I think I'm going to speak first.
Yep.
And can you mute, Liza? Okay. Oh, I'm worried about the echo. I'm going to speak first and say just how important it is that all of you were here. It was wonderful, as Leanne said, to see friends, old and new, and to see some people that I don't know at all, because that number of people and your involvement says that we are beginning more and more to recognize just how much it matters to get out there and win these elections. You've heard from Leanne the broad run of where she thinks it might be possible. You heard from Mark on the statistics and the research that we're doing. And you heard from incumbents who hopefully touch your hearts. And now, the end of the free lunch, of course, we're going to ask you to contribute again and again and again to ChangePA, because as you heard, we're trying to be smarter. We're learning more about how to choose candidates who really have a chance. We're learning more about giving early. And the bottom line is what Mark kept saying. What you give is what we will have to hand out to support the candidates we all want to see winning. So please, and thank you, and so much thank you for being here. And
I would also like to thank you for being here. It's really heartening to see so much enthusiasm for what is going to be a very difficult fight in the midterm elections. And it is gratifying to see you all here. And I hope that following all the expertise that you've been privy to this evening, you will be even more enthusiastic. Beside and in addition to giving money, which we do need and want very much, perhaps you would consider giving a house party and inviting your friends either on Zoom or actually to your home or your garden for a party. We will supply you with a dynamic speaker, and hopefully your friends will be enthusiastic about ChangePA as well and donate. When you go to the donate page on our website, you will see my email address for house parties. And if you are interested just even in discussing what would be involved, please email me and I will be very happy to work with you to put together a party. And with that, I think we're finished for the evening. And again, thank you all so much for coming.
Gosh, thank you so much, everybody, for coming. And thank you to all of the elected candidates, including the Attorney General, including Leanne Krueger and Jen O'Mara and Joe Webster. It's always so great to hear from them. It's been wonderful to be a part of ChangePA and this. And thank you, Judge Bernstein, very much for your very detailed analysis. I'm just going to put up now onto the screen the ChangePA donate slide so that you'll have the information that you need in order to donate if you would like to. And thank you all again for joining us. And if anybody else would like to say anything, or if Judge Bernstein would like to play some more Simon and Garfunkel, like a bridge over troubled water. That's what ChangePA